All right. Okay, welcome everyone to HED Talks. Today we're in, what is this? Is this our third trial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, who remembers who we've done so far?
Lizzie Borden.
Lizzie Borden.
Oh, Al Capone.
Al Capone and Lizzie Borden. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah, we seem to be staying in America with these great trials, don't we?
That's where the criminals are.
Yeah, look at, I know, what does that say about us?
Good reason.
Oh my goodness, and this is no exception. This is no exception. Yeah, we're just, we're staying close to home these past couple of trials. So today what we're going to talk about, or who we're going to talk about, is these two men. Have you heard of Sacco and Vanzetti?
Yes.
Yes. It was an amazing case that had an astounding impact, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. And I have this photograph. I wanted to point this out to you. This is Sacco and this is Vanzetti. And do you see that they're handcuffed together?
Yes.
And when I saw this photograph, after having studied the case, I found it deeply profound, because the names Sacco and Vanzetti, because of this case, has linked them almost as if they were one person. Almost like you cannot say Sacco without saying Vanzetti. I'm trying to get background on Nicola Sacco. So I'm doing research, and every time I put in, if I put in Nicola Sacco, I get
Vanzetti.
Exactly. Yes, I got Sacco and Vanzetti. So these two men, here they are handcuffed together, and they're going to come all through time linked forever. And so I found this very, very profound, this photo. They had such an impact that, did you know that there are many songs and ballads about Sacco and Vanzetti? You might have heard the Joan Baez. Yes. Oh, Effie, you have, right? Was that Effie? But yeah, a lot of people. What about Woody Guthrie?
No, I never heard Woody do it.
So there are ballads about this. There was such a sense of injustice with regard to it. And then there are movies and plays. So it really has had a huge impact, and one that's long-lasting. I found a little clip. There's no audio to it, but I'm going to show you the impact. For me to stand up here and say it is one thing, but let me show you the impact that these two men have. There is no audio, so.
Good, I thought I'd gone deaf.
No, you're fine, Pat. That's the judge, Judge Thayer. All right, here they come. It'll show the two men in just a minute. You can't really see their faces, are in shadow. There they are, Vanzetti, Sacco.
Emergency?
This was happening throughout the world. You'll see different languages here. Look at the crowds.
Holy
And they're
cow.
all wearing hats. Yeah.
Mounted police.
Yeah.
Yep, to handle the crowd. Look.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, after their execution?
This is the funeral procession. So these people, these two men, these two laborers, immigrant laborers, that is what they caused. They caused that kind of a reaction. So we want to find out why. We want to understand why. Why would people have reacted, that many people, so emotionally in the way that you just saw? Well, it has everything to do with the times. All right, this is the late 1800s, early 1900s, and there is huge upheaval at that time in the United States, especially on the East Coast, right? Right? And one of the biggest threats to the country at that time is something called anarchism. Have you heard of anarchy?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, everybody's heard of anarchy. All right, well, what is anarchism? What is that all about? Here's a definition. All right, it's a doctrine urging the abolishment of the government or of government restraint as the indispensable condition for societal and political liberty. So really what they're saying is government's too big. All right, and it's, what, Judy?
Does it sound familiar?
Well, you know, it was interesting, Bob and I were having a conversation earlier, and just, you know, this whole story, what it brings up for us. So it's about government just being too big and having too much power in the life of the average person. Now, there are different forms of anarchism, all right? Oh, this comes out blurry when it's stretched out, all right? So we think of Sacco and Vanzetti as falling into this category right here. Philosophical anarchism. When you think of anarchy, what do you think of? What does the word emote in you?
Lawlessness.
Lawlessness.
No
yes.
government at all.
What?
No government at all. Everything is loose.
Everything's loose, and does it sound kind of chaotic? And yeah. Well, you know, philosophical anarchism is a peaceful, non-violent type of anarchism, and the best example of that I could think of was, you know who this is?
No.
Henry David Thoreau.
Oh,
Yes, right? Henry David Thoreau. All right, and he wrote. We're familiar with him because he wrote what?
Civil disobedience.
Yeah, he wrote Civil Disobedience.
Never
Yeah.
even connected him.
Yeah, Henry David Thoreau is an anarchist. Would you think of him as an anarchist?
No.
No, but he is. He wrote Civil Disobedience, but it was philosophical disobedience, okay? Here are some philosophical anarchists of the time, and their philosophy was to think more respectfully of the average person. Don't minimize them, thinking of them as capable. Don't assume that they're going to be unruly, that they can rule themselves. That is the philosophy of it, all right? But this is a peaceful form. This is a peaceful form. There is another side of that, another side that is not peaceful, right? Another side that is what?
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary. And does that bring in the potential for violence?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We've got a lot of that going on in this country.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where we're at now.
And that is what was happening at this time in the early 1900s. And why? Why were people up in arms in the early 1900s thinking about revolutionary anarchism? It was because of the American Industrial Revolution, right? You've all seen the photos. You know what the conditions were, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And we also realize that who was in the, yes, yeah, who were in the factories?
The little guys.
Yes.
And children.
They look old, don't they?
They're worn out.
Look at them, I know, these are children. And the children look as if, exactly. So the Industrial Revolution is not only employing children, not only having them work in dangerous conditions, what were the hours like?
Long.
Long hours. What was the pay like?
Low.
Low pay.
Low. Do you know that you were in contract to some of these factories, and if you didn't make your quota, if you lost some of the materials, guess who was responsible for that?
You were.
Exactly. They would take it out of your pay. All right, so conditions were absolutely...
barefoot.
Yeah, oh yes, yes. There were no rules, no regulations, there was no OSHA at the time. Exactly, right? So you're working all these hours for very little pay in very dangerous conditions. Do you know, I looked up 1907, so this was from 1907, 1908, and on average, 35,000 workers died or were maimed. All right? Now let me point out something about if you were maimed, okay? So you're a worker and you lose a limb, but you survive. Can you get a job anywhere else?
No.
Was there workers' comp?
No.
What do you do?
You put your kids to work.
You pray.
Yes, yes.
Goodness of your family.
What?
You had to beg. You're forced into begging, either relying on extended family members or panhandling in the streets. There was no support system. There were no supports, all right? So those are the conditions. Would that alone make you angry?
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, well, what if we then look a little deeper into the situation and understand that not only were they living under these conditions, but also right in front of them, big and clear like a neon sign, we have the people that were benefiting from their labor, right?
And they flaunted it too.
Yes, of course they did, and they treated the laborers like they were, you wouldn't deign to be, to talk to them or anything. They were flaunting it.
Yeah.
And you were working to make them wealthy. Would you like to see the Rockefeller estate? I thought you might like to see this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Not bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So,
That's nobleman.
yeah. So now here you have workers working under these conditions, which would be enraging enough, but then you see how other people are raking in. And there were no regulations, right?
Not at all.
What did we have?
Monopoly.
Excellent. Oh, you caught my symbolism there, Dennis. Thank you. Yeah, we had monopolies, and there were really no regulations. They start coming, and things start changing. But because of all of this corporate greed, people were getting very, very angry. Now, that's not the only thing that was happening in the early 1900s. All right, so you've got that with the workers, and that's getting them very upset and looking to make changes. But something else is happening on the world stage that is making the government and the corporations really, really nervous. Can anyone guess what it is?
War.
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 Russian Revolution.
Communism.
Forgot all about the Russians.
Yes. What happened in Russia?
The
Communism.
communism.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
they took over the government.
yes, yes, yes. So this is happening in Russia, and they succeed to the point that what happens to the Tsar?
They killed him.
Yes.
Killed the whole family.
Yeah, so do you think that monarchs and top tier people were nervous?
Oh, God.
If that could happen,
Oh, God.
if that could happen at that time, yes. Yeah, so it was making everybody very, very, very nervous. And in the United States, there was a huge distrust.
Immigrants.
Suddenly, at first we needed the immigrants, right?
Yes, of course.
Because we needed to do what?
Work.
Work.
Work, but to build up the brand new country, right? We're expanding to the West Coast. We need people to come, so we're inviting people to come, giving away land, and they're really enticing people to come. And then we get into a different time period, and now there is a great distrust of immigrants who are thinking what? Yeah, they can come. That's what they're thinking, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson. I mean, I don't want to read that whole thing for you, but he is really stoking the flames here. Very nervous about what's happening, what he sees in the United States, what he sees happening in Russia. All the monarchs are very, very nervous about losing their power. And so what is President Wilson saying about immigrants?
Well,
Slow them down.
he doesn't want them in.
Yep, who have poured the poison of disloyalty. All right? All right? They're trying to destroy our industry, and you can read it for yourself. But it says right here, we want to what?
Purge.
Yeah.
Purge their corrupt distemper. All right, so what happens next under Woodrow Wilson? He hires an attorney general by the name of Mitchell Palmer. And Mitchell Palmer is going to get right to work on tracking down immigrants. And what are they going to do?
They're gonna go around and pick them off.
Yep, they're going to track them down, they're going to arrest them, they're going to get rid of them, they're going to deport them, and it was called the Red Scare. So any immigrant that was here that had any kind of socialist or communist ideation, expressed that in any way, they really, really went after those people and got rid of them. When I say they, Palmer was not alone. He had an assistant. Any guesses on who that assistant is?
No. I should have.
Yeah.
Should've.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And he was pretty good at getting information on people, wasn't he?
He did that all his life.
He did it all his life. He got really good at that.
Yeah.
So the two together really went after these people. So what do you think the immigrant population at the time was feeling?
Nervous.
Terrified, because you could be ripped from your family that's here, right, and sent back. You would not be able to stay here. So everybody was afraid of deportation. All right, so it was said Palmer and Hoover took their Red Scare to a whole new level. They were going after everybody. They were going after everyone. And it was really, really a terrifying time. It was a chaotic time. Look at this. These are photos. Does that look like an absolute terrifying mess to you?
Yeah.
It was. It was an absolute mess, and people were living in utter fear.
Well, Wilson was a prejudicial man anyway.
Yes.
He used any excuse to put other people down.
So this is happening. This is what's happening. on the East Coast in the United States.
Oh, it was
Okay?
awful.
Now far, far away, in a land far, far away, okay? There is this guy. This guy, all right? Does he know that any of that's going on?
No.
No, he doesn't know. He is born in this little town in Italy, this little village in Italy. He says he had a very happy childhood. His father owned a vineyard, so he grows up in the vineyard. He says that he and his brother got to sleep out in the vineyard at night to chase away any animals that might come to eat their crop. That it was lovely. It was a beautiful childhood. And why did he want to come to America?
Opportunity.
Yes. Why did any young man want to come to America? Because they heard. What did they hear? What were they hearing?
The dream.
The land of
The-
opportunity.
The land.
Realize richness.
Yes. And it was a country that was free. It had liberty. And any person, regardless of status, regardless of class, could make their fortunes here. That was what they were told. And so he came. He wanted to come. He wanted to live that as a young, adventurous man. And so he does. He comes to the United States, and he was fortunate enough to find himself a craft that would make him some decent money. He was a shoemaker. All right, he made shoes. And then he also was fortunate enough to fall in love with this woman. This is Rose, his wife Rose, and that is their son Dante. They have a little girl eventually afterwards. And so he's living a pretty good life. But he's in that factory, isn't he? He's in the factory doing what?
Working his buns off.
He's in the factory making shoes. Now, the next person that we're going to learn about is Vanzetti. He had a different kind of a childhood, not as nice as Sacco's. All right, his childhood is a little bit different because his father needs to get him out working. All right, so when he's only 13 years old, he too is being raised in a little town in Italy. And so his father sends him out to be an apprentice in a bakery. So that sounds nice, doesn't it? Especially if you can steal some bread or something. I mean, a bakery, working in a bakery doesn't sound terrible, does it?
No.
But he, and perhaps he did get the benefits of maybe loaves of bread. But it was 18-hour days, and if you're working in a bakery, you know you're working all night, right?
Yeah.
So he's a 13-year-old boy, and he is working 18 hours a day, meaning that he's working all throughout the night. He's working all throughout the night, because that's when the bakers have to do the baking. Now, when he was 20 years old, his mother, who he loved his mother, she had cancer. And so he stopped working in the bakery, and he wanted to be there for his mother. And he was with her day and night for 3 months. It took 3 months. 3 months of agony. He was with her for those 3 months and took care of her while she was dying. And when she did die, she died in his arms. She died in his
This is
arms.
still in Italy.
Still in Italy.
Okay.
Yes. And so it was this sorrow and sadness, all right? So you have Sacco, who was coming because he was a well-adjusted guy, full of confidence, and he wanted to come here and fulfill his dreams. And then you have Vanzetti, who felt like he wrote this letter. It was absolutely, completely, like hauntingly beautiful after his mother died. He wrote a letter talking about how he was looking over the bridge, and how at the bottom of the bridge it appeared to him like a restful, peaceful place. What he's saying was, it looked very appealing to jump off this bridge. And so, but the way he describes it, he wrote a lot of letters. My background is in acknowledgement of his letter writing, actually. But at the time, he is feeling like, if I'm feeling this way, I need to make a big change, a big move. And what do I have to lose? So what does he do? Yes, yes. So he's going to try to completely change his life and come to America. He does, and he's working all these incredibly difficult jobs. He's in a stone quarry, he's working for a railroad, he's working in a factory because that's what's available for people. And as he's in these factories and he's seeing women, children, men, and people losing limbs, people just ashen. He says they've lost the color, and they're young. And so he writes a lot. He's a wonderful writer. And his letters are available too, if anybody wants to read them. So he does not want this for himself. He's just seeing too much despair. He's just surrounded by despair. And so what he decides to do is, he's saved up enough, he's going to get himself a cart, and he wants to be a fishmonger. He's going to sell fish because he can be his own boss. He can be outside. It's not dangerous like it is in the factories. And so he's satisfied. This is good. He's found it. This is okay. He hasn't met anyone or fallen in love, but he's okay because now he feels like he's in control of himself, and he's feeling satisfied. So both of these men, they both arrive in America, both in the same year. It's 1908, and both of these men happen to arrive in the same place.
Boston.
Yes, yes. They have arrived in Boston, Massachusetts. They don't know one another. They've never met. They don't know the other exists. Not yet. All right, so they're trying to have a life, and we remember Palmer's raids, right? Right? So what do you think the anarchists are going to do?
Retaliate.
Yes, they're not going to just take this, right? They're going to retaliate. And how do they retaliate? They're led by this man. Oh, have you heard of him?
No.
Yeah. Oh, you were just reading that out for me? Yeah, Luigi Galliani. And he is not going to take all of these raids lying down. He's going to get retribution. And the way he's going to get retribution is to bomb the home of the Attorney General. He bombs the home of the Attorney General. There are other bombings as well. But this isn't even the big thing that they do. Do you know what the big thing that they do is?
No.
They bomb Wall Street. There's an
That's not a
explosion.
terrible idea.
There's an explosion, a big explosion in Wall Street, right at the JP Morgan building. The corner, you know, have you ever seen that JP Morgan building? And in this bombing, 30 people died, and 300 people, about 300 people, were injured during this bombing. So what are tensions like between laborers and police and government?
Toxic.
Toxic, yeah, exactly. That's a great word for it. That's a great word for it. So we've got Sacco and we've got Vanzetti. They're there at this time. They're in the same place. And then while these things are happening, there also happens to be a couple of crimes. that have gone on. The first one happens on Christmas Eve in 1919 in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. And what happens is there's a vehicle that's going to run down a payroll vehicle. The payroll vehicle. All right, so there are men in one car shooting at the payroll car, the payroll transport, and when they do, they hit the payroll transport. It hits a tree. This probably isn't it. I just found this
Yeah, it's a very good.
to illustrate. Doesn't it illustrate the story very well? So it hits the tree, and the would-be robbers, they take off. They don't even get the money. So nobody's hurt and nobody gets the money. So really, like, nothing happened. They attempted to rob the payroll transport. All right, so no money taken, no harm to anyone. Suspects ran. Suspects ran, they got away. The next thing that happens is far, far more serious. All right, this happens in Braintree, Massachusetts, just a few months, like, 4 or 5 months later. And this is outside of a shoe factory in Braintree. And a car drives up. The car drives up. It is filled with about 4 or 5 men. 2 of them get out. 2 of them get out. They have guns, and they're just waiting for the paymaster and his guard to exit the shoe factory, all right, because they've got the case with the payroll, and the 2 men that got out of the car was a Buick. They shoot down the paymaster and the guard, all right. The paymaster, Palmenter, he's hit twice, he dies. The guard is hit 4 times. And he dies also. And they took the money. I think it was like $35,000 that they got. All right, so there were witnesses to this because this happens during the day. So there's witnesses to that. Is that a Buick? I just got an old car. I don't know if that's a Buick. What is it?
Looks like a package.
All right, well, pretend it's a Buick.
Oh.
All right, because that was the type of car. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything about cars. All right.
It's a nice car.
It is, isn't it?
I like
Yeah.
the white wheels.
Isn't it very lovely? All right, so witnesses, there's witnesses to this. And the local police are thinking instantly, this has to be the work of who?
Anarchist.
Yeah, exactly. So both of these crimes, it has to be the work of the anarchists. Now, they happen to know a well-known anarchist, this guy, Mario Boda. It's spelled with a U, but it's Boda. And they happen to know that he's in the area. In fact, his vehicle is at a local auto body shop. So the police go to that auto body shop and say to the owner, when Boda comes to pick up his car, stall him. Tell us, let us know that he's here and stall him. Keep him here because we want to pick him up, we want to talk to him. All right, so there's, again, I have no idea if that's a Buick, I just like the way it looked.
That's Pontiac.
Oh, that's Pontiac.
Don't know.
So Boda comes, but he's not by himself. He's got like 4 other guys with him. So it's Boda and 4 other guys. What does that sound like? Yeah, sounds like a game. Remember in the Buick, how many guys were there?
4.
4 or 5 guys, right? That's what the witnesses said. All right, so the mechanic has his wife call the police. The mechanic's trying to stall them, and they get nervous. They don't like this. Remember, deportations everywhere. They're all Italian. And so they take off. They take off. By the time the police get there, the mechanic and his wife are just saying a description of who the other guys look like. So the police go right out, and they happen to spot 2 guys that fit the description of some of the men that came with Boda, and they're on a streetcar. So they get on the streetcar and they take these two guys off to talk to them. All right? These two guys,
Yeah.
Sacco and Vanzetti.
Sacco and Vanzetti, now they have just met one another. All right? They have just met one another. They are now invested in this anarchism under the leader, the local leader in their area. They have things. They have just met one another. And now they're being picked up because they were at this auto body shop for this guy, Boda. When they are asking them questions, they do a search and they find guns. Now at this time, during this Red Scare time, that's all you need. All you needed was if somebody was an immigrant and they had a gun on them, that was reason enough to arrest them. So they're arrested, they're brought to the station. All right, their guns are confiscated. These are their mugshots from that evening, Sacco, Vanzetti. All right, so the police start questioning them, confiscate their guns, and when they start questioning them, the men lied. The men lied about being in the, oh, that wasn't us, we weren't at that shop. We weren't at that shop. Why would they lie, do you think?
They got deported.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because when they were arrested, they were never told that they were being arrested and that they were suspects in a murder case. They didn't know that. They didn't know anything. They didn't know about a murder case. They didn't know about the attempted robbery. They did not know that they were not told that they were being questioned for a murder crime or an attempted robbery, the one from December earlier. All they thought was, we just don't want to be deported. They just thought they were getting picked up because they were Italian immigrants and that they might get deported, so they lied. They lied. They said, oh, we were visiting a friend and here, and that's why we're here in town. We actually don't know why they went to that auto body shop. That is still a mystery. We don't know why. Maybe they were all going to go out and do something, but we don't know what. And they never did it. All right, so then they put them in a lineup. Okay, so they've got both men in a lineup for these two different crimes. Oh, see how quickly the time goes? I will speed up now. All right, so the Bridgewater crime, the attempted robbery, witnesses ID'd Vanzetti, but not Sacco. And in the exact reverse, the Braintree, which is the murder crime, they identified Sacco, but not Vanzetti. All right, so now we've got some witnesses, and they are going to have to go to trial because the witnesses are enough to give them an indictment. Okay, so they're going to go to trial. Interestingly, the prosecutor decides he's going to try Vanzetti first, even though that's the lesser, that's the minor crime. But he had a very devious agenda, and this is what it was. Vanzetti had rock solid alibi for the December 24th attempted robbery charge that the witnesses ID'd him. Remember, he's a fishmonger, he delivers fish. Well, it was Christmas Eve, and his customers saw him. He delivered for their Christmas Eve meal. He delivered fresh fish. It was eel. Is there something? Yeah. Is there eel? He was delivering eel, and many of his customers said that he was there, they purchased, he delivered, it happened, Christmas Eve, he was there. But here's the prosecutor. All right, the prosecutor, he's going to go forward with this anyways because despite they have far, far, far more witnesses giving him an alibi, he still has the witnesses that ID'd him. And the judge, here's the judge there, he's saying, yeah, go right ahead. But the other thing about it is the prosecutor, Katzman, he knew that Vanzetti was never going to testify in his own defense. Why?
He was afraid of deportation.
No, because,
He was afraid.
yes, because he was an anarchist. And if he said anything about that, if he were cross-examined about being associated with the anarchists after all of these bombs, right? Then what was going to happen to him? Right. Yes, yes. Well, you know, the fact that he didn't testify really didn't help him anyway, because they found him guilty and the judge sentenced him to 12 to 15 years, which was unheard of. Unbelievably, unusually harsh for an attempted robbery. But he got 12 to 15 years. What was the hidden agenda? What did Katzman want? What he wanted was, when he tried the murder case, remember, no one ID'd Vanzetti, right? No one saw Vanzetti at the murder.
You mean Sacco?
No, no one saw Vanzetti at the murder, the Braintree.
Oh, okay.
All right? So if you get Vanzetti convicted before the murder, then he's going into the bigger trial as what?
Convicted felon.
Yes. Yeah. So even though there's no evidence against him for the Braintree, there's no evidence against him. But he still was indicted for that because he was with Sacco. So Katzman had to, the prosecutor, wanted him to be a convicted felon going into that murder trial. Yep. Yeah. Yep. The trial is held in Dedham at the Norfolk County Courthouse in Dedham. And you know all the upheaval that was going, you know all the people that were protesting this? Yes, they had over 700 police, state troopers, and mounted police, over 700 during this trial. The trial lasted for 7 weeks. All right, part of the evidence was the prosecutor was saying that the guard, remember the guard that was murdered, the guard's gun was taken from him the day of the murder, and the night that they arrested Sacco and Vanzetti, remember they confiscated their guns? They were saying in court, the prosecutor said in court, that the gun that they had confiscated from Sacco was the same kind of gun that the guard had, was recorded to have had. All right? All right, so that seems like very damning evidence, doesn't it?
Unless they lied.
Unless they lied, that's right, Pat.
They lied.
It wasn't the same kind of gun, all right? What Sacco had was a .38 revolver, and what the guard had was a .32 revolver. It was not the same kind of gun. And the prosecutor knew it. How do we know? Because in 1977, that evidence that had been buried all that time was discovered. So we now know that the prosecution knew. In the interim, not because of this, but because of things like this, there is now a law, all right, that requires prosecutors to disclose any exculpatory evidence. Happened in 1963. So obviously not because of that, it was discovered later, but that was going on. that was happening. Prosecutors were hiding exculpatory evidence. All right, so back to the trial. In this particular trial, they decided, the defense attorney decided that they did want to put the two men on the witness stand to testify in their own defense. And so, you know, they did, and they came across sympathetic until cross-examination, because what comes up? Yeah, yes. So this comes up, and the jurors go out on July 14th, 1921. They're out for 4 hours. They come back with a guilty verdict, and it's murder in the first degree. In Massachusetts in 1921, murder in the first degree is an automatic death sentence. Automatic. All right, so these two guys, very, very little evidence against them, one with an alibi, Sacco did not go to work that day, but Vanzetti did. And people said, we saw him, we know where he was. All right, so they had alibis, but still they were found guilty, and they received the death penalty. And then here, like we've been saying from the very beginning, look at everything that's happening. Riots are happening all over the world because it seems so obvious to everybody. Look at this.
Wow.
Yes. Yep. That, you know, these two guys were just being a scapegoat. They were being held up as to immigrants. You know, this is what we'll do to you. Don't mess around here. This is what we will do to you. And so there were protests, a lot of protests. Now the judge, remember Judge Thayer? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that gave, he's the judge in the first case. He was the judge in the second case too. Same prosecutor, same judge. All right? He was reported as having said this. He was with a friend or an acquaintance who happened to be a college professor, and he said this to the college professor. The college professor was very disturbed that a judge would say this. And so he reported it. It bothered him so much he reported it, and it comes out in the papers. Now, of course, when you've got a death sentence under these circumstances, you're gonna go for an appeal, right? So they do. The defense lawyer goes for an appeal, and that goes before a judge, and the appeals judge is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So this goes on for years. So this goes. They're in the appeals process for a few years, when suddenly they get a break in the case. There is an amazing break in the case, and that break is this man. All right, Medeiros. He happens to be in the same prison as Sacco and Vanzetti. He's in the same prison, and he says to Sacco, "I know who did it. I was there.
Oh my God.
The murder. I know who did it." Sacco tells Vanzetti, they get their lawyer, they're excited, there's light, something's gonna happen, we might not die. You know, they're in a death house is where they are. Okay, so they're going to get an affidavit from this man who's saying he knows what happened, that he was there that day. All right, he was somebody that worked with a known gang member, Joseph Morelli. Morelli's gang happened to have been in Braintree at that time. All right, but here's something that's really, really interesting. All right, he knew that there were two vehicles, and that was something that was never released to the public. That information was never made known to the public, but the police knew that there were two vehicles. All right, so the two guys get out, they do the shooting, they get in, and witnesses said that there were other guys, they called it a Buick, and they took off. But no one ever knew, except for the police, that they switched vehicles at a certain location. That was never made public, but this guy knew that there were two vehicles and where they switched them out. How could he have known that? All right, so Sacco and Vanzetti's lawyer is thinking that this is great, this is cause for a new trial, and it sounds like it. There's new, valid evidence for to redo the trial and to present this new testimony. We've got an affidavit from this guy. So another appeal goes to who?
They're denied.
Kill that man before.
Gee whiz. He kept moving.
This is the actual one. Can you see up here? Can you read it? This is actually it. I found it.
Oh, you did?
Thayer, Sacco, and Vanzetti.
Yeah.
See this denied stamp? I put that in myself. That's a little graphics thing that I did myself. All right, but that's the actual document, and it's denied. It's denied. All right, so now Sacco and Vanzetti, they take it to, it goes to the Supreme Court. It's denied there. They've gone as far as they can go, and so now they are scheduled to die. They are going to die by electrocution. All right, and then I have a clip to show you the reaction.
1921, two Italian-born anarchists, Nicola Sacco at right and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, are arrested for the robbery and murder of two men at a shoe factory in Massachusetts. Their case becomes a sensation thanks to the hot-button issue of immigration. By the 1920s, 4 million Italians have come to live in America. Those with communist or anarchist leanings are seen as a national security threat. Many have been deported. The crackdown on dangerous immigrants will fuel the extraordinary rise of a young federal agent, J. Edgar Hoover. But the case against Sacco and Vanzetti is flimsy, and many consider them scapegoats. When Judge Webster Thayer sentences both men to death, people are outraged. Thousands take to the streets in protest. As the story spreads, riots erupt nationwide and overseas. First in Paris, Rome, and Milan, then in London, where communists attack America's excessive use of the death penalty. But Thayer holds firm, and despite 6 years of appeals and requests for a retrial, on the 23rd of August, 1927, he sends Sacco and Vanzetti to the electric chair.
Sadly, it's interesting to note, on that night, there were 3 executions. 3 executions. Ironically, the first execution, remember the guy?
Yeah.
The evidence?
Yes.
My goodness.
He was scheduled for, just by coincidence, he was scheduled also that evening, and he is the first to be executed at 12:09. He dies. At 12:19, Sacco dies. And then at 12:26, Vanzetti dies. The 3 men die. All right, so sad story, but they live in infamy. And in one of Vanzetti's letters, they wrote many letters, and you can read them. You can I've read quite a few of them. I still have more to go through. But Vanzetti says, not in the way we wanted, but we did make change. Not in a way we would ever have conceived of, but we did make change. And we will, in our own way, in this way, this crazy mistake, we will make a change for the future. And he's writing to Dante, remember Sacco's son? And Ines, his little girl. And Vanzetti's writing letters to them saying, your father is the bravest man I've ever met. And he just pours his heart out in all of these letters. His feelings were that they did make the change that they initially sought out to forge in labor issues and a better future for other people. Vanzetti, when he went into the room to be electrocuted, he shook the hand of the prison warden and thanked him for being kind to him. And then he sat down in the chair and he said, what I would like to do right now is to forgive everybody.
Wow.
He wanted to go without any hate or resentment in his heart. He said, what I'd like to do right now is I would like to forgive everybody. Oh, tearjerker, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm afraid I don't have anything more cheerful for next week either. All right, next week. Next week, I am going to tell the story of the Black Sox.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right, we're going to go through the Black Sox scandal.
Joe.
Oh,
All right, Shoeless Joe Jackson. All right, everybody, thank you for coming, and I will see you next week.
Hey.